What were you going to ask me?
If you were always this way, you know, brave.
I'm not brave, mate.
Of course you are. You rescue people.
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes I do other things.
Like killing people.
Yeah.
My father, he kills people too.
Hello and welcome to Comic Book Movie Oblivion, the podcast about feature films based on comic books and comic strips that people have stopped talking about. We are your hosts, Jordan and Kumar, that's me.
And me. And
we're not doing a feature film this week, we're doing a Netflix film, but I mistakenly thought it was a feature film.
I see. Have we broken a rule?
We've broken it before, because we've done like Captain America, which was direct-to-video.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah, so it's that's all a bit iffy. But should I tell the story of how I saw this?
Please.
I haven't even said what the movie is.
This is new to me. Oh. We are doing Extraction.
Extraction from 2020.
A Netflix original. Apparently the most watched ever original Netflix. I believe so.
Movie on Netflix. Based on a graphic novel called Ciudad.
Yep. Spanish for city.
Which was printed... I use that word advisedly in 2014. We'll get around to all that stuff.
Oh boy.
Yeah, oh boy is right. So how I saw it was when I visit my older brother in Toronto, every night whenever the rest of the family goes to bed, he's like, let's watch a movie. I'm like, okay, cool. And I always say, okay, cool, but it's not cool because I'm super jet lagged and I often doze through the movies. And the other thing is, he is one of these people... and I don't have the heart to tell him otherwise, but he's one of the people that turns the smooth motion on their smart TV. So you get what's called SOE, soap opera effect. So everything looks like it's shot in video and it's like super clear, like it doesn't have the grain of film. It doesn't look like you're watching a movie. It looks like you're watching Days of Our Lives.
Ah, I see.
Because everything, and that's how they set the TV. Like if you go into an electronics store and they've got all the TV set up, that's how they're set up with the smooth motion on, so they look like you're looking in an aquarium at real fish.
Okay.
And it drives me crazy. So I have trouble focusing. So anyway, every time I've seen a movie at his house, and this year it was, or last time I visited him, it was this one, and the Batman.
Okay.
That one.
Pats.
Yes, and the Bob Odenkirk John Wick ripoff one, which I think was called Mr. Nobody or something like that.
Sure, I've heard
but to me, they're all like, these are all so-so. Every time I go to his house and watch a movie, every time I'm like, this is just so-so. But it's not fair because I'm not zoned in at all.
So on to this week's so-so movie.
Yeah.
We need to...
So I came in this with the preconception that it was like, I didn't know what it was. I thought, okay, this is a theatrical release and it's finally out on Netflix. We're watching it on Netflix.
Okay.
And also I was like, well, this is just a so-so actioner. And also I thought, before I watched it this week, I thought that I didn't remember any of it. But in fact, I recognized every scene. So I was awake. I might not have been present mentally, but I was awake for the whole movie because I remembered every scene. I was like, okay, I remember this location, I remember this location. Attention. Yes. So, anyway, we've got... Oh, pause the podcast.
Nope, this thing is just one big rolling cliche.
Yes, but there are some twists.
Okay.
There's a twist.
It does have twists, but if you're older than 8, you'll see them coming, so... Pause the podcast or not at your own discretion, depending on your age.
Okay, I'm going to say, yes, I'm going to say we're going to reveal the twists, but they're that probably doesn't matter. I'm going to say pause the podcast, maybe go.
Very good.
I would say don't bother with the comic, maybe pause the podcast and go watch the movie is what I would say.
Very good.
Okay, so 2014...
Oh, well, we're starting right in 2014. With the comic, yeah. In media res, okay.
Yes, so this is when the comic was released by Oni Press. Apparently, as far as I can tell, because I was looking online, only in digital format for these 5 issues.
Oh, man.
But then there was a hardcover released.
Okay.
I can't tell if there was a soft cover. it seems it's very hard to get any, and Oni is a pretty major indie publisher. Like, they would have if they published something, it would have a presence.
Okay.
So that struck me as a bit weird. But the important thing is it was written by Ande Parks, who was a comics writer who has written, like, Green Arrow, a bunch of other stuff, and some other stuff for Oni. Oni basically publishes black and white indie books. That's basically it. But also written by Joe Russo and Anthony Russo.
Allegedly, yeah.
Who are now... Allegedly? Okay, interesting.
Well, yeah, I did find an interview. I couldn't find... There's not a lot of information about this comic.
Right, yes,
online,
exactly.
As you've pointed out. And I did eventually find an interview with Ande Parks and with the brothers Russo.
Okay.
Which sheds a chink of light on how it got made, and we'll get to that a bit later.
Okay. So... They are known now.
Oh yeah, they're a big deal in the comic book
Marvel,
feature film area.
So they did the Winter Soldier, Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame. These are the four big...
These are the biggest Marvel movies in the 2010s,
yes,
right?
and Winter Soldier came out in 2014, so the same year that this comic comes out. Before this, they're directing episodes of Arrested Development, Community.
And You Me and Dupree was their big...
that movie, yes, that's
was their
right.
big
that's right.
hit.
Now... Okay, so there's going to be a few episodes of this show, this podcast, which is about the intersection of comics and movies, where sometimes we have a mercenary situation where a filmmaker is trying to get their film made, nobody's paying attention, so they make a comic of it first.
Yeah.
And that's easy to show to executives so they understand what they're talking about.
We've talked about this a little bit before.
Or just to convince people that it's a seller, that it has brand name recognition already. One of the two.
A hook, right?
A hook, right.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this before, particularly in the Kick-Ass week.
Yes.
Mark Miller's Kick-Ass, which was, of course, optioned as a film before it was even finished.
Right.
We did talk a little bit about it with a friend of the show, Glenn Danzig, and...
Yes.
Veronica.
Yeah. But
are there any other examples?
Not yet, but there will be a few more.
Absolutely.
Some that are going to be really obvious. This one not so much, because when I saw the year 2014, I was like, wait, Winter Soldier was 2014, so I was like, okay, so they worked on Arrested Development. Dan Harmon's a real geek, so he would have been interested in comics. Rob Schrab was a director on many episodes of Community, and he was a comics guy before he became a director of TV shows. So I was like, okay, maybe these Russos were interested in comic books, possibly, and there was a genuine interest in the medium and making a comic book, and they weren't immediately going to, we're gonna make a movie. Let's make this thing so we can sell a movie of it.
Yeah, they weren't...
And there's a 6-year gap before this movie comes out.
Well, that's another thing. They weren't hugely successful. Well, they didn't have the stratospheric levels of success that they currently possess. Right. But they certainly weren't... they weren't hard scrabble. They weren't struggling. You Mean Dupree made a lot of money, $160 million, I think. And, of course, they're directing Community and Arrested Development. These are both very popular television shows. You'd think that they wouldn't have too much trouble getting their movie made.
Yes.
So they don't seem like an obvious candidate for, I need to drum up support. And some evidence there, because, you mentioned this book came out in 2014 and the movie came out 6 years later.
Yeah.
But the first mention of this film, and the comic, are in 2008.
Right.
I found an article from 2008 in kind of like in the pop culture media press about a forthcoming film based on a forthcoming graphic novel by the Russo brothers in late 2008.
Right.
So it didn't even have a title.
And this is the one starring The Rock.
Not even
later.
yet. That comes later.
Okay.
So that comes in. Okay, I've got a timeline here.
But hang on just a second. So, 2008. But at this point, they were supposed to direct this movie as well. That was the plan, right? They were going to direct from their own graphic novel?
Oh, you know what?
That's not what happened.
I think it's probably that. I think so.
Okay.
Or writing, but certainly they have some kind of big role, right? Yeah, and this in 2008. This is only a couple of years off You, Me, and Dupree. Right. So I've got my timeline here. We will eventually talk about the comic, itself, or the plot rather. So the first announcement I found about the movie was in September 2008. Okay, we're mentioning that there's a upcoming film. Based on an upcoming graphic novel or comic.
Which is still 6 years away from the comic coming out.
Exactly. Then
Wild.
4 years later is the next reference I found to it, where it was announced that The Rock was going to star in the film, which was going to be called Ciudad, and was going to be set in Ciudad.
And the comic is still not out at this stage.
No.
But The Rock looks more like the guy in the comic.
I suppose.
Sort of.
It's so much that he looks like anyone.
Yeah.
Then 2 years later, the comic comes out.
Okay.
Okay, so now most of this buzz has been about the film, not about a comic.
Right.
The comic, where is the comic?
Yeah.
Who knows? Does it even exist? Is it like the Oblivion comic?
No, I tried to look for back issues. Can I buy back issues of this? No.
Nope.
Couldn't find them. Couldn't find any physical existence.
By
Digital
2014,
only.
The Rock is out.
Okay.
They're looking for a new star. Well, there's no one involved. No director attached. Presumably the brothers Russo are the directors. No. Just that the comic is out and there's an upcoming movie.
Okay.
Then the next we hear about it is 4 years later.
Okay.
2018.
Okay.
When Sam Hargrave is announced as the director.
Okay.
And Chris Hemsworth is announced as the lead.
So,
and the film will be called Dhaka, not Ciudad.
Okay. Darker.
Dhaka,
Sorry.
the capital of Bangladesh. And Sam Hargrave is a, I believe, stuntman and stunt director?
Stunt coordinator.
Stunt coordinator, right.
And I found he's got a lot of comics credits on both sides. I mean, Marvel and DC.
Brilliant.
So he'd done a bunch of Marvel movies, but he'd also done, he done Birds of Prey, the TV. Or was that a movie? That was a movie. So he did stunts on that, but I also think he did stunts and appeared in Atomic Blonde, which is we will be covering on the show at some stage as well.
Brilliant.
So he's got a few connections in there.
Very good. So that's 2018, and the film comes out. Was it 2020 or 2021?
That's when I watched it. My brother suggested watching it. Oh, wait a second.
You'd think
when did I watch this? I can't imagine my brother waiting to watch this.
Okay. Well, this can be solved with a quick Google, so we'll come back to it later.
It comes out. No, I think it came out in 2020. I don't know when I watched. I feel like I watched it only last year, which would have been 2022.
At which point it became the biggest Netflix, the most viewed original film on Netflix.
Yeah.
Yes. We have no box office figures for it because Netflix doesn't release them. There's, they don't tell you how much money.
But sometimes they release to theaters so they can get critics reviews and
stuff.
Not
in this case, presumably because of the pandemic. But it did cost, I think, something around $70 million.
Whoa. Wowie. Okay.
So let's hope a few people subscribe to Netflix.
Yeah, I really don't understand the business model. People are going to sign up to watch this movie? How does this work?
Beyond the scope of this Beyond the scope of this podcast.
Bizarre. Okay. So those are the writers of this comic. The artist.
Well, okay, God, do I even get into it now? I may as well, okay, since we've already started talking about this. So eventually, after some poking around, I managed to find an interview from 2014, which is when the comic was released.
Yeah.
And where it appeared, it's called Russo Brothers Explore Action Heroism in Ciudad.
Okay.
Very anodyne title.
Okay.
But it was in cbr.com.
Yep, comic book resources.
Bam.
Okay.
And the first question they asked was this a comic or a movie first? Mm-hmm. How did it become... Well, what they specifically asked was, how did this movie idea of yours become a comic? So it's almost the reverse.
Yeah.
So in this interview, the brothers confirmed that the comic was a movie idea first.
Okay.
They straight out say it. They claimed they were approached by Oni, who, quote, brought up the idea of us getting involved with a graphic novel first, end quote.
Okay.
And then at that point, Andrew Parks was brought on. Andy Parks was brought on by Oni.
Okay, yeah,
to work
he'd worked
with them.
Okay, yeah.
And then apparently what happened was they just sort of kicked around ideas over the phone a bit.
Uh-huh.
Then the film was optioned by Paramount.
Okay.
At which point, this is what Parks said, once it gets optioned, people start wanting a script like yesterday. Mm-hmm. So I went out to LA to meet with the brothers in person. This is the first time they've met in person. Mm-hmm. That was more than 5 years ago now, so 2009, 2008.
Right, okay.
Must be 2008, because that's when it was first announced that the film was going to be made. We spent a few days in a room together, had a couple of dinners and so on. By the time I left California, we had agreed on enough of an outline that I could go and write the graphic novel.
Yeah.
And they could go and write the screenplay.
Yes.
I think I finished the script in 2010, presumably the script for the comic. It took a while to find the right artist.
Okay.
He then goes on to say, assuming the film version of Ciudad gets made at some point, which I certainly hope happens, this is 2014, it will be very interesting for people to see how the two different forms of the story developed. It's the same story, but handled in very different ways. I think each stands on its own.
Anthony Russo, as far as I can tell, doesn't have a writing credit on the movie.
No, do you know who does have a writing credit on the movie? Ande Parks.
He does?
He does.
I didn't notice
I
that.
think
Okay.
he wrote it, actually. So what is the involvement of the Russo brothers in this?
Well, I would watch... So I didn't watch... I watched the beginning of the credits, and it looked to me like the writing credit was Joe Russo and his was the only name, but I'll double-check that before we put the notes up on the... Before we publish the episode. But, yes. You know what? It kind of reminds me of... I'm not saying this is what happened in this case, but quite often if Stallone makes a movie based on a book, like Over the Top or a couple of others, he sometimes goes to the writer and say, or I think Cobra, the writer of that novel, he's like, let's republish this book and list me as the writer of it.
Right.
And the writers are like, the book already exists, like it's a published book with their name on it, and he's like, no, we'll sell more copies this way.
You gotta do a Stevens... You gotta do a Sylvester Stallone book. Oh, release the book.
Yeah.
No, but... Yeah, but so that interesting here that it seems like the Russo brothers contribute an outline for this comic.
That's right, yeah.
And then
Well, it
Ande
does say,
Parks
so
goes
the actual
away.
credit on the cover is written by Ande Parks, from a story by Ande Parks, Joe Russo, and Anthony Russo. So it's on the cover, they're not lying about it on the cover. It does say written by Ande Parks, so...
Got it.
It's just a question of the complete outline. So it's drawn by a guy named Fernando León González, who I don't know anything about, but he draws either like Eduardo Rizzo or Jordi Bernet or Dave Gibbons, depending on if he's drawing a face in close-up or somebody from a distance or whatever it is. It was just very familiar looking.
It's all very familiar and comfortable, isn't it?
I don't know. It's 10 years later. He might be a great artist now. I don't know what he had done at the time, but it's very. In fact, at times it's hard to follow.
Couldn't agree more.
There's a moment, especially where well, we're getting this far ahead of the plot, but we'll rewind later. But there's a point where our hero Tyler Rake opens. So he's on the run, kind of. He's in hiding. He's a wanted man. Yep. But so he's kind of in hiding, but he gets hired for this job, and he opens a safe, and we get a panel where it looks like he's looking into a square, and inside the square there are other little squares and lots of other little tinier squares. Yep. And I'm looking at this going, okay, I guess he's opened a safe in this panel, and those are false passports, and that's like money or something like that. Yeah. I took a guess, and I'm sure it's a correct guess, but I was only able to guess because everything is so cliched in the whole story that I knew this is the moment where the hero gets out his fake passports and money so he can travel internationally. Yeah. That's why it was able to function, because otherwise it was just like these weird geometric shapes. It was very abstract. I was kind of like, what am I looking at exactly?
Yeah, I agree. And it's disappointing in a comic that should, in theory, be about some great kind of action on the page.
Yes.
It has so little comprehensible action on the page.
Yeah.
And instead of being about, because it's not about anything.
No.
Because, as you said, it's just cliches. The whole thing is just cliches from start to finish.
Yes.
So there's no kind of exciting narrative or thematic complexity to the book that might grab you in and help you see past the boring art. Instead, if you're there for the art, though, you're going to be bored too. Yeah. So this comic, I don't really get the point of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Even as a pitch for a movie, I'm like, I think the only thing we're possibly pitching is, the thing that actually works in the artwork is whenever anyone's bloody, because it's an Oni press black and white book, it's just like black. So you can see like the gore is just like, it's in a sense, it's super gory.
Yeah.
But it's just because people are just covered in blackness. And if you were trying to sell this as an option to a studio and you took it into the executives, you're like, look at this super gory, violent movie we're going to make, and that would be the selling point, because there's no other selling point.
Exactly. But that's not what happened, because this film This was a movie long before it was a comic.
Well, it was an idea from.
Well, it was an idea. Yeah, but then, you know, just when they were trying to figure out, I don't know, did the Russo brothers need a hobby? Because it's like 2008, and they're on the phone with Ande Parks talking about this comic they're going to do, and then the film gets picked up, and the brothers take off.
Yeah.
And then Ande Parks just left to write this story for this comic.
Well,
basically
he's
on his
still.
own.
I mean, Community was 2009 to 2014, so they're still in there busy on that.
Fair enough. So this is. Did they? I mean, in the interview that I found, the 2014 one, they did say that they liked comics.
That's all you need.
That's all you do. You know, you bought comics.
I like comics, therefore I can make movies. I can make comics and make movies based on comics.
I actually I love that reaction. Yeah, they said, "Oh, you know, we bought comics when we were kids, so we think we can write them now."
Great.
How hard can it be?
Wow. Yes. Well, that's. You know what? There's even. I was just. Actors do it too. You see a lot of actors come out with comic books, and the lead characters look like the actor writing the comic. Yeah. So Keanu Reeves has one out now called Berserker, and it's like, well, what is this? You're trying to sell a Berserker movie.
That would explain why the comic is so shit, except that they didn't seem to have had much to do with writing or drawing it.
Right.
It was all Ande Parks.
Well,
and this
I think,
artist.
okay, so, I mean, I don't blame Ande Parks or the artist, because they're getting a paycheck, which is very difficult to do in comics. And they're getting probably a guaranteed paycheck from guys who have been working on Arrested Development for 3-4 years and have money. And probably could help finance this thing or whatever. I don't know, but I mean, I'm not going to blame them for taking a paycheck and saying, well, this is a shitty outline, but let's do it. Because we're getting paid for it. It's a freelance gig as far as they're concerned.
Right. So at least someone got paid.
Yes, I'm sure lots of people got paid. But anyway, so we'll talk about the plot. You want to
such as it is.
You want to try to delineate it, because I read this 4 days ago, and now it's mostly washed out of memory.
Do we just list? Okay.
Let's go through. Okay,
do we even just list the cliches?
Okay, so it starts.
No, okay. You have a go. Yeah.
Starts in medias res. There's this girl who's been taken hostage. She's kind of she looks like a punk rocker.
Yep.
She's about like 18 years old. And she's been taken hostage, and this guy who's like a kind of negotiator, or I don't know, he's there to observe that she's safe and then take the deal back to the girl's father. And we learn that the girl's father is a drug lord who's in jail, and his business manager's on the outside handling all this kind of stuff.
Yes.
But
he can't afford the ransom.
Well, yes, this we learn shortly afterwards, is that the ransom is like $20 million.
Yeah.
And this guy's the guy's fee. This guy, the handler, or not, the rescuer's fee, the negotiator, let's call him, or what was his name? Tyler Rake.
Tyler Rake.
Tyler's fee is like $5 million or something like that. They can't even pay that because his funds are like.
But just a quick corrective: did this happen in the comic? Because I'm not sure it did.
I'm trying to remember, because I don't see any other reason. Yes, but I don't know any other reason why the handler would have to steal her away from Rake, because otherwise they could just pay him and be done with it. Because I don't think they have the money.
It's so hard to know what's going on in this comic.
Okay, so...
As we pointed out, everybody looks the same.
Yeah. So anyway, so he's supposed to just see that she's alive and walk away and tell the drug dealer that they want $20 million. But instead, what he does is he actually, they put a hood over his head, they walk him out at gunpoint, but he fights back. Yeah. And then he goes back in the room, he beats up all the guys, he rescues the girl.
This is how the comic starts.
This is how it starts,
So and mind you, I didn't really know what was going on.
Right.
You know that scene where we talked a little bit about how incomprehensible some of the action is in this comic?
Yeah.
They put a hood on him, and they start walking him down the stairs.
Yeah.
And then the way it's drawn is so odd.
Yes. It looks like he's jumping.
It does look like he's jumping.
Jumping out of down from 20 feet or something.
So it's a really narrow panel, right?
Yeah.
And he's just sort of squatting in it. And I'm looking at this, what's happening? And then in the next panel, they're at the bottom of the stairs, and I think what happened is he ducked down.
He ducked.
And then the gunman behind him fell over him, and then he flips him.
And then, but the thing is, what I found was my eyes were glazing over. Whenever we got to the action scenes, I was like, just get to the end of the action scene and see what the end result is. Because all the in-between stuff is like...
I don't think it's not good if you have to look at an action sequence. You should be... You should be excited to see the next panel and see what's going to happen. But instead, I kept going back and go, what happened?
Yes. Well, there's a worse scene when he goes back and he rescues her, because I think he knows that the reason he's been hired is because they can't afford the full ransom fee. That's why he's been hired. So he knows that much. So he goes back and rescues her out of there. He takes her to the building. Then they're in the courtyard, and there's a very confusing scene where this little girl sees them and is like, Daddy, man with the bad man with the gun. And I'm like, wait, how did she know this?
How did she know that?
Are they just based on the sound of gunshots or something? And then he's like, okay, leave us alone, Dad, to the dad of the girl. And they go out, but then the dad pokes his head out the window and it's like he's got the girl. I'm like, wait a second. He saw him. What is happening?
Yeah.
So confusing.
Yes.
I was like, are the pages out of order? No, but they weren't because I was following the dialogue and the dialogue was all in order.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so then we find out that what had happened was... Okay, oh, by the way, this is all taking place in a city called Ciudad el
Este.
Which is maybe fictional?
No, it's real. It's real.
Well, that's bad.
But it's probably not this
okay, so this
hellhole that it's
South America. It's on the border of Brazil, I think. And
it's in the east of Paraguay.
It's and it's an absolute shithole. As it's described, we get narrative captions telling us what a shithole it is and how much crime there is. Yeah. And I'm like, whoa, okay, so I thought it had to be fictional because as far as I can tell, there are no civilians. Well, there are civilians in this town, but the way they describe it in these 2 pages with lots of captions about how much crime there is, I'm like,
captions.
Why would anyone live here?
The way this comic chooses to impart information through captions is really frustrating. I take it you noticed this as well. It has about 4 or 5 different kinds of fonts that it uses in the captions.
Yes.
And there are different ways of dumping the information. Sometimes it's a letter. Sometimes it's just the omniscient voice.
Yep.
Sometimes it's thinking.
Yeah.
Pick one.
Yeah, absolutely. So then we get a flashback to 3 days earlier, how this all started. I want to say, was it a different show? It might have been Decon Comics. We mentioned one episode for some reason. I hate this narrative structure of where you start with the action scene.
Earlier,
You start with the action scene and then you cut hard smash cut to 3 days earlier. I'm like, no. If you can't think of something interesting to start with, something's wrong.
Yeah.
And does this in the movie too, but we'll talk about in the movie how I think they could have fixed it. But anyway, so we had this very long cold open, or in medias res opening of the rescue, and then we find out how this girl was kidnapped. So she's the daughter of this drug dealer. She's a very primly, like, she goes to a private school. She's supposed to be like 18. She seems a bit old for school, but she doesn't look punkish at all. She seems to be a different person, but she's always surrounded by bodyguards. But one night she sneaks out to go to the club.
Well, she goes with her bodyguards, but then she
goes with the bodyguard.
In another really weirdly drawn scene, there's a woman in what looks like a strapless dress who then flashes... She pays this woman to flash the guards to distract them. Except she flashes them wearing a strapless dress, except she lifts up her top instead of pulling it down.
Yes.
And I just went back and forth thinking, how did this work?
Yeah. Okay, so she flashes them, and she, the girl who was captured, I can't remember her name.
She just runs off with her boyfriend.
She runs off with a boy that I think she met, or her boyfriend, whatever. They smoke some weed in the park, and then some cops walk up on them, but they're not really cops, or they're cops in the pay of the rival gang lord who has paid them to kidnap her.
Yes.
Now, how did they know that she was going to be able to sneak away from her guards this night when she paid that woman in the bathroom?
Yeah.
I don't know. It didn't add up to me.
Nope. Whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever, they're evil, and they just plug the boy too. To establish that they're evil.
Yes, that's right. They kill that guy. So then the manager of the business goes back and tells his boss, like, hey, like, your daughter's been kidnapped. They want $20 million. They're like, we can't pay that. And he's like, well, I can hire this guy. Okay, so now we get this guy who looks like Keanu Reeves. With the way he's drawn.
Right.
He's
Pre-John Wick.
Pre-John Wick. But this is very much, this is a John Wick Taken kind of guy. It's a one man army, but in this case, we have no background. He's just a hard ass. He's just awesome dude, mercenary, awesome mercenary dude.
He wakes up in bed with a girl.
Yes.
And then he tells her to get lost or something like that.
Yeah. And he's like got long hair and a beard. He's wanted. He's on the run.
Yeah.
Because of some job, and the other people in the job have been killed, and he's maybe the last one, I think.
I don't know, complaining about how much this is drawn, but in this scene where he's first introduced, I think when he says goodbye to the woman, he's then on the phone, but then his computer starts talking to him.
Yes. Yeah.
And it, because it's not clear that it's computer talking, the speech balloon just sort of tapers off.
Yes.
And then I'm reading this thinking, is he talking to the... He's not talking to the guy on the phone, because he's saying, we can hear what the computer's saying, but we can't hear what the guy on the phone's saying, we can only hear him. It's like such an odd choice.
Yeah.
Are we just supposed to accept it and move on? Well, I'm wondering why I can't hear what's on the phone. Why can I hear the computer and not the phone?
Yeah. So he needs the money because he's on the run. So this is the scene where he opens the safe and we get a bunch of white squares.
Yeah, bunch of squares.
White squares in the safe.
Lucky we know that he's about to get his cash.
And we've seen this 100 times in other movies and stuff, so we know what he's doing. And then we get the scene in front of the mirror, so we know he's going to shave and cut his hair, which he does. And in the next scene, he shows up in the city, and then he goes on. Then we cut to he's putting the girl in the trunk. He's going to rescue her. Okay, so now we get the rival gang lord, and he has a gang of kids that work for him, like the kids of the streets work for him, which we
get this scene in the film as well.
Yes,
to establish how evil he is, he makes one of them cut off his finger.
Yes, cut off his fingers because some other guy stole it. Anyway, some other guy stole from him. They threw him off. The other
he just tortures kids for fun, and uses them in his drug.
Yes, but I also the thing about the kids remind me to mention because it actually reminded me of Slumdog Millionaire because I think that was the movie. I don't remember what year that came out, but that guy used the whole thing had a kid network of criminals.
Okay. Okay.
So anyway, these kids are trying to find somebody's been skimming, and so they throw one kid off the roof, and they're like, "Who? Somebody come forward and say who it was." Another kid comes forward and said it was a guy you threw off the roof. They're like, "Aha, you're clever, but I need to make a point, so cut off your fingers." And then he gets the call that his hostage has escaped, the girl. At
which point he calls in his corrupt people that he has in authority.
The whole government, the police, he runs them all.
Yeah, which is just ridiculous. If he runs the government, the police, the army, etc., why was the girl he kidnapped being held in a grungy apartment with a bunch of hobos looking after her?
Yeah, why
doesn't matter because it's... And also, he's in the same city as this rival drug lord.
Yeah.
What's the rival drug lord's influence in this situation?
Yes.
How can they be
he's
rivals
running out of money. His money's all locked up. Why does he need the daughter?
Why are they rivals if he already controls the entire city? Because he locks down the entire city and mobilizes the entire police force.
Yeah. By the way, it's a Lebanese police force and a Lebanese government. I don't know. Is there a historical, legit reason for this?
I didn't find too much information, but apparently there is a large Lebanese community in this city. It has a large immigrant community.
Tyler fights the cop. The cop show up. He shoots him. He's like, "It's the Lebanese police." I'm like, "What?"
I don't think the police are actually Lebanese.
Why are the Lebanese police in this city? I don't know.
I know that Ande Parks never went to Ciudad del Este. He actually said in the interview that he had an option to go, and he's just like, "Well, I'm not going."
Of course he didn't go because if he did, he wouldn't have portrayed it as a complete shithole.
Yeah.
It's really disappointing to find out that this is a real place because it's like, wow, you've done these people
It should
dirty.
be a fake place. Yeah, agreed.
Should be a fake place, and we'll get to that when we talk about the movie as well. Yeah. Okay, so Tyler gets to his boat where he's supposed to transfer the girl onto the boat, but at this point, the handler of the...
Is that who it is? Because I had trouble keeping track.
Well, I lost track, but I think that's who it is because...
I think the handler
I might be making that up because that's what happens in the
film. But
he does get ambushed.
I'm just like, what's... Someone ambushes him and wants the girl.
I think it's because definitely the guy, the handler, the manager, sorry, let's call him the manager.
He's a lawyer, actually.
The lawyer. He's... definitely also one of the factions that are trying to get the girl away from Tyler.
Yes.
He is. So maybe I'm guessing
he does
this
at
is
the end
point.
of the comic steal all of the drug lord's money. the dad drug lord's
Okay.
money. So perhaps he just doesn't want to pay Tyler Rake because he's already ripped off all the money.
Yeah. Okay, so that goes south. So there's a big fight shootout. So eventually, I think it's at this stage that Tyler has to call on the help of a friend. There's all sorts of stuff where he... Okay, anyway.
Did you remember the bit where he realizes something's up when some laser dots, laser pointers, like laser sights,
Okay.
appear on his forehead,
Okay.
and then he reacts like, "Oh, I'm in trouble." But you can't
I don't
see
even
laser.
remember this.
This is just the scene with the boat
Okay.
where he realizes where they're telling him he threatens to blow up himself and the.
Yes, right. I remember that, yeah.
He's much less sympathetic, this Tyler in the comic. He drugs the girl. He threatens to blow her up, and that's why it's so much more icky when the Stockholm Syndrome stuff happens later in the comic.
Yes.
Anyway, there's this, I don't even know why I'm mentioning this, but the laser dots appear on his head and he reacts, but you can't see laser dots on your own head.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I'm looking at it right now.
And he does a double take, right, in the comic, right? Like he knows that he's got a laser sight on his head.
Yeah. Okay. So he gets a call from the enemy, which I'm pretty sure is the
lawyer. Yeah.
I think so. But he calls up. He says, "Mr. Rake," and Rake is on the phone, and the laser starts on his head. And he says, "Who is this? How the fuck do you?" And the phone says, "Send the girl forward now, or my men will shoot you where you stand. I'm counting to 5."
I guess he just doesn't want to pay him.
Yeah, that's okay. So,
fair enough. Which is essentially the motivation of the film too, but for slightly more complex reasons.
So at this point, I think he's like, okay, I'm desperate. So he has one of his old buddies, one of his old mercenary buddies, lives in this. See, I don't know. Now at this point, I was like, and he lives there with his wife and son or daughter. I don't know why anyone would live in this city the way it's been described. It's like, why would a civilian live there with their family?
He's a former mercenary.
Yeah. But he's a really nice guy. Welcomes him into the home with his own family.
But then, shock horror! What happens in a cliched film when someone who you think is your ally takes you in?
Oh, the nicest guy, yeah. When the nicest guy takes you in. So, yeah, he's got a daughter, too, and they're like, okay, he sends his wife and daughter away. This is where we get the whole thing where Rake has given the girl... like these abortion pills, so she is it's supposed to be standard procedure. He keeps saying it's standard procedure.
Because she might have been raped. Because she gives her RU 486.
Yeah, and she says I wasn't raped. Okay, but then we find out about. So then then the guy betrays him. The friend betrays him. There's a huge fight in his kitchen. He kills the guy, and then it's like, okay, we got to go on the run again.
I've written down here.
So he, by the way,
in this scene,
Rake
he has a knife in his shoulder in one panel, and in the next it vanishes.
Okay, he pulled it up in the gutters. In the what was I gonna say here? I can't remember now. So they have to make their getaway again. They have to escape to another location. So I was going to say Rake has 2 handlers. He's got the handlers, not the manager. He's got 2 people that find his jobs for him and like give him some data. But it's just 2 dudes, and he's constantly angry at them. He's constantly yelling at them for being idiots. And you get the jobs, you find them, I do the jobs. That kind of thing. He's a real tough guy all the time with everybody. Okay, so then they have to get to the border. They have to like cross.
Well, there's one bridge in and out.
There's one bridge. They have to get to, if they can cross the bridge, they'll be safe. There's a huge fight, lots of explosions, etc., as they go across the bridge. Then they get away, but he's like, well, he wants all of the money. He wants the money to go to the girl. This is I haven't mentioned. So there's a whole thing where his friend says like, you're too close to this job. This is before he reveals who he is, that he's betraying him for the money. He's like, you're too close to the job. You're treating her like a daughter and you're the father. I'm like, okay, we've got a little bit of a dimension coming in here. But at the end, when they're in the truck crossing the bridge and he's about to say goodbye, he kisses her full on the lips.
They make out, basically.
I'm like, what?
It's gross.
Bizarre.
Gross.
Didn't we have a whole father thing going on here before? Okay, so he's giving her this abortion pill, and now he's kissing her. And
it's gross.
then he's like, okay, give her $5 million or whatever it is. And the handlers are like, we don't have $5 million. Like, you find the money and you give her that money. And
then she's off in art school.
And then in the end, we see her. She's in art school, and he also it's worried like she's gonna be hunted down by this rival gang lord for her life. So that we get a final scene where he, in disguise, catches up with him in a bathroom and
shoots him
dead.
A scene that appears completely in the film as well. It's lifted entirely for the film.
Well,
Among
okay,
others,
so
except with a different protagonist. Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so that was that awful comic that I don't ever want to talk about again.
Yeah.
Let's discuss the film, which is awesome.
Starring Australian soap opera star Chris Hemsworth. So 6-year gap. So we start with the opening. This time, the cold open is on the in medias res opening is on the bridge. It's the fight on the bridge, and Chris Hemsworth is all gored up, and he's kind of dizzy, and he's having some kind of visions of feet, blurry visions of feet on a beach or something.
Yes.
He's like, what's that?
Great.
And then
it's only about 30 seconds.
It's very short, quick. And then we immediately cut to 2 days ago. So that slightly annoyed me, but I will talk about how, if we remind me later, we'll talk about how I would have fixed this. We've got a change of location.
Yep, this is important.
We've gone from South America to Mumbai / Dhaka, Bangladesh.
South Asia.
I don't know why this change was. It's amazing to me that I watched this movie and you'd think I would latch on to a detail like that, and I had forgotten that it was set there. But I'm guessing it was laxer COVID regulations in India, because they certainly thought they didn't have COVID going around. I remember my mom, every time I talked to her on the phone, she was like, there's no COVID going on.
I'll have to, although that's good theory, but I'll have to deny that because it was called Dhaka in 2018.
Okay, alright, yes, okay, that's right. So
they must have, for whatever reason, I guess they didn't want to go to, I don't know, they decided to move it to India.
Well,
for whatever reason. To the south, to the subcontinent.
So I was like, okay, wow, Mumbai, Bangladesh, I was kind of digging it for a minute. It reminded me later, I mean, there was one episode of Miss Marvel, the TV series.
I'm so glad you mentioned that.
Set in Pakistan, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
It was, that series was very so-so to me, but that episode was like, oh my god, I'm living for this. And Black Panther, when they went to South Korea, and it wasn't Seoul, I can't remember which city it was.
Busan.
Was it Busan?
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, this is awesome. I love this. I love seeing this city I've never seen before. I love it. Bangladesh is a total shithole in this movie.
Yeah.
And I was really like...
They didn't even shoot it in Bangladesh. They shot it in...
I suspected.
Yeah, but yeah,
Why make it look that bad? If it's not, you didn't even shoot it there, why make it look that bad? But also, it doesn't make any sense. Why would a drug lord in Mumbai be rivals with somebody in Dhaka? They're so far apart. In overpopulated cities, there's lots of business in both those cities that are hundreds of kilometers apart. There's no reason they would be so at war with each other they'd be trying to kidnap each other's kids.
You're right.
Crazy.
Although I did feel like it explained why one drug lord was in total control of his city and the other...
That it did explain that, but it doesn't explain why his rival was not some other city in Bangladesh or Karachi or something closer.
In the Western imagination, Mumbai and Dhaka are right next to one another.
Interchangeable.
Across the river.
So, okay, so in this case, we don't have a girl. We've got a 15-year-old boy named Avi, and he is a schoolboy.
Yeah.
And it makes sense that he's a schoolboy because he's not 18 years old and he doesn't dress like a punk when he sneaks out at night.
No, although he still does sneak out and go to bars and smoke weed. I thought he was a bit young for that,
He
frankly.
does, yes.
But he is the son of a drug lord. Although he's impossibly pure as well.
But he's the son of a drug lord. He goes that he drinks, but he's very wary of smoking the marijuana cigarette that's offered to him. And I'm like, what's going on here? This kid's already... he's kind of on the edge. I mean, he's very clean, and he's not on the edge.
There's no depth to his character. He's just there to to be saved
Yes.
and to impart childlike.
I would say there's no depth, but there's depth to the performance. The performance is good from
performance
this
is
kid.
fine, but the character there's nothing there. He's just there to be rescued and impart innocent wisdom to Chris Hemsworth.
Yes. So it's the same thing. He's out smoking marijuana. The cops walk up to the kids, kill one of the kids, his friend, and they abduct him.
Yep.
We get a little bit of him before he gets captured that day at home. He's playing piano. Yep. There's actually some quiet moments in this movie, which are good. Yep. They're like really. I was like, whoa! And especially after reading the comic, which is just nonstop. This moment of this kid playing the piano was actually quite good, and actually is given more context later in the movie. So I actually quite like that.
Okay.
But it kind of plays out this. But then we cut to our mercenary, who is Chris Hemsworth in Australia, hanging out in the sun.
In Kakadu or somewhere like that.
Yeah, and they're like cliff jumping into a lake. There's a great line where his buddy says to one of his other buddies, "Quit swearing so much." Because the comic just says fuck every panel, probably.
You're right, it does.
And he says, "Quit swearing so much, it makes you sound stupid." And I'm like, who wrote this line?
Someone who read the comic.
So maybe Ande Parks wrote all the fucks in the comic and Joe Russo didn't like it?
Or vice versa. No, it must have been the former.
Because Russo wrote the movie and he must have written this line to be like, that comic's stupid. Okay, so...
You're right, that was well spotted.
So Hemsworth, there's a moment where he jumps off the cliff. The other guy's really scared. One of his buddies is like, I'm not going to jump off this 40-foot cliff into the water. It's crazy. He just walks off, and then he sits at the bottom for a while. We get another quiet moment. I was like, oh, this is actually interesting, and that's given more context later on, too. But he obviously, very obviously... So the thing about this movie is it's all cliches, but it's different cliches. It's maybe slightly better choice of cliches than the movie, because it's very obvious than the comic, because it's very obvious the guy has a haunted past.
Yeah. And
it's like, okay, that's a cliche, but at least he has a haunted past. In the comic, he had nothing. There was no past. We have no idea why that guy's such
I would agree.
A muscle-bound hard ass.
Yeah. They're not good cliches, but they are better cliches.
They're better. It's a better choice of cliches.
Yes. Yes.
Better performed.
I'll concede that. Yeah, of course, because Chris Hemsworth is a great actor.
Chris Hemsworth is so good in this.
Yeah,
I was really surprised by his performance.
Yep. Well, he always gives a good performance.
He does, but he doesn't usually get to play haunted, past, drunk, suicidal.
Yes.
There's a real question of suicidal ideation in this, of like, why are you taking this job?
Well, I mean, that's the idea, because he's got this haunted past. He's engaged in this self-destructive behavior.
Yes, whereas in the comics, it's just like,
I'm some jerk.
I need the money. So I'm on the run. I need the money.
Completely
also,
unlikable.
They don't have that thing about him being wanted, and there's none of that fake IDs. All those cliches are not in this. Thankfully, it like removes a whole unnecessary element, and instead there's a bit more exploration of that other stuff. So.
So then he takes the job. He agrees to take it.
Right. It's not government. It's a private job.
Well,
and it's some kind of larger operation. It's not just two dudes.
Yes.
It's actually a team of like
team.
6, 7, 10
of whom
people.
Chris is the boss. Tyler. Chris Hemsworth is the boss, and the prime and the main agent. But as you say, he has this big support network, multi-ethnic support network.
Yes.
But importantly, first, when we have the scene where the lawyer, except he's not a lawyer in this case, he's just he's his gopher, his handler, or whatever.
Yeah, I think he's his manager, because he's at the when Avi comes home from school.
He's there.
He's in a glass meeting room, like one of those meeting rooms with glass walls and a big conference table, and he's wearing a nice outfit, and he pokes his head out and says, "Avi, you're late from school. You're supposed to come straight home."
He's his concierge.
Yes.
He's
that's what he's called in the comic, isn't it? It's concierge.
I don't
Am I conflating that with something else?
But it doesn't matter. But he's a recognizable Bollywood star.
I'm complaining with Barbarella last week.
Oh, of course, of course you are. Duran is the concierge.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Of course. Brilliant. So, as you say, he goes to visit the drug lord, the father of the abducted boy, of Ovi Senior. His name is Ovi as well, and says to him, "Your son's been kidnapped." And he's like, "Well, that sucks. You need to get him back." He's like, "Well, we can't afford to get him back." So in this case, they're completely out of money.
Yeah.
He says, "We can't afford to get him back." we can't even afford to pay someone to get him back.
But he has an idea.
And
for
he
how
does.
to trick
But
him.
first of all, Ovi Senior threatens him.
He threatens his son.
Threatens his his son. He said, you're going to get my son back, or you're not going to have a son.
Or your son's not going to see his next birthday.
You think I can't get to him from in here?
Yeah.
And so,
He's forced into
concierge,
this-
his name is Saju.
Saju, yeah.
Saju is in a pickle, but he has an idea.
Yes.
We don't know what the idea is, but
Now-
we do know what the idea is.
I also want to say, and this is not a fault of the comic, but I love hearing other languages in movies. And
well.
I did like hearing the Hindi and Bengali in this
Now,
movie,
I hate to do this.
but I'm guessing those actors probably don't speak those languages, or a lot of them don't.
You guessed correctly.
Right.
I looked this up. I guess we may as well mention it now. The Bengali in this movie is apparently incomprehensible.
Okay.
Because they've hired Hindi-speaking
Oh, okay, got it.
Indians.
Got
So
it.
people from the Bollywood
Yeah.
film circuit or,
Yeah,
or
okay.
acting circuit.
Well,
And-
they tried,
Yes.
at least.
Yeah, it's funny. They went to the trouble of getting a Bengali filmmaker to translate the
So
script
where did they shoot it if they didn't shoot it in Dhaka?
in India and in
Okay.
Thailand.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. Why not just shoot it in Bangladesh? As you say, I don't know. They had to use fake guns because India's gun laws are very strict.
Yeah, sure.
So they use rubber guns in a lot of the scenes with CGI muzzle flashes. Anyway, so apparently the Bengali, there's some complaint in the Bengali, as you can imagine, in the Bangladeshi press.
Right.
There was a lot of problems with this movie.
Sure.
Because it makes Dhaka look like
Yeah, absolutely.
The absolute
100%.
sewer of
That
the
was
world.
really,
offensive.
like I
really.
said, I appreciated that they changed the location, but having this set in a real location made it look really bad. I'm sure that's an awesome place to go, and I would want to go there, and some people would probably think about going there, but after seeing this movie would change their minds and not want to go there.
Huge slum.
Yeah.
But it's got
all
the,
slum.
Dhaka's got many beautiful buildings
Absolutely.
from when it was a regional capital, and and also it's worth mentioning just briefly that people from Bangladesh are very proud of their language in particular.
Yeah.
The Bengali language has a really rich kind of like literary history going back 1,000 years. And one of the reasons why Bangladesh is an independent country now is because of how important the Bengali language is to Bengali culture.
Right.
So you make this film where you get a bunch of people that can't speak the language properly delivering the dialogue.
Wild. Okay.
It's a shame.
Wild. Yeah.
It's a shame.
Yep.
I just want to mention something quickly about the casting director.
Yep.
Casting director was Sarah Haley Finn, who has cast most of the MCU movies and TV shows.
Okay.
She's cast Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man in the original Iron Man movie,
okay.
which was a coup, I suppose.
Right. So she must have cast Chris Hemsworth as well as Thor.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But also she cast all those Hindi speakers as Bengali actors.
Right.
And apparently it's not the first time she's made this kind of generalization because of course she did the casting for Ms. Marvel. And there was some complaints about, although Ms. Marvel herself is played by a Pakistani American actor, some of the other characters in her extended family, specifically her parents, again were Hindi-speaking Indians cast as Pakistani.
So we get he goes into Tyler goes in to see that the hostage is alive, as in the comic, and then he's supposed to report back the ransom and report that he's seen the kid alive. As he's leaving, he's got a hood over his head. He counterattacks the guy and rushes back.
Well, someone snipes one of his escorts.
Yes.
Yeah. It's the director. He plays the sniper.
Oh, okay. Right. Okay.
Sam Hargrave.
Right. Oh, I did want to say that I did like the Vic, the handler, that woman who was like the head of the handlers. I did like her as a character. She had more color than anything in the comic.
Yeah, sure.
So, and she's like, this is her job. When she comes to his house in Australia, and she's like, we've landed a whale. She's like, I kind of don't want to give it to this guy. Like, she's like, this guy is not okay. And they have a guy in Dhaka already. But she's like, he's retired.
Oh,
we can't go to that.
Chris Hemsworth says, there's a bit of foreshadowing here, which I don't think was present in the comic. Chris Hemsworth says, that's where so-and-so is.
Yeah,
She
I
says,
think it's in the
yeah,
comic.
but he's retired.
Yeah, I think it's in the comic. There's fairly early. We know that he's got a friend, I think.
Yeah, I noticed it in the film, but you know, the comic.
But she's like, I kind of don't want to send Chris Hemsworth on this. Like, he's a mess. She's like, show up in the morning if you're sober.
Yeah.
So
we've established that he's a mess because he's drinking hard and he's having flashbacks and he floats in the bottom of a pool and meditates.
Yes.
He's a
well, is he
soul.
meditating or is he trying to drown himself in a vague way, if you know what I mean?
Okay.
So he rescues a kid. There's a huge shootout. He gets to the boat. We're supposed to load the kid onto the boat. And then Saju attacks.
Well, I mean, we don't know it's Saju, but we do because it's obvious.
He takes off his mask after. Yes, he's wearing a black.
But I knew who it was. As soon as it goes down.
Yeah, kind of. But Saju's supposed to be a businessman, but later, after this whole thing, we learned that he was special forces.
Yeah.
So he's actually all-purpose.
Of course, but
manager,
I mean, who else could it be?
Yes.
So, how did he know where the boat was? I don't know, because he sabotages the boat. And then lures.
Well, again, it's like how did
operators.
how did the corrupt cops know that was the day Avi was gonna
sneak out?
Does he sneak out every night, or what was? Are they
not only sneak out, but sneak out of the bar that he already snuck out to for a smoke out the back?
Yeah.
Yeah. Same. How did they know? How did Saju know where the boat was? How did he get on board the boat without anyone noticing? And sabotage the boat so that they would come down and investigate the sabotage, and then he would kill them one by one. If he's this much of a badass that he can take out a boat full of seasoned professionals, why didn't he just rescue Ovi to start with?
Yeah. I guess they would have recognized him as the business manager.
Presumably he's associated with the drug lord, sure. But even so, I mean, goodness me, he's so competent.
Yes.
Anyway, is now a time to talk about the action. So
let's talk about. Okay, we haven't really talked about. We had a few because we've had the rescue of the kid.
Yep.
Which is elaborate, and we've had the shootout at the rush to the boat, all that stuff, and then the boat. So it's the modern hyperkinetic action, martial arts style,
inspired by John Wick.
Definitely, and probably Bourne as well. The Bourne movies.
Unlike the Bourne movies, there's not a lot of cuts.
No, it's very tightly choreographed.
Yeah.
Which is what surprised me about my brother not having watched this the second it came out, because he's the guy that got me into martial arts movies. And
this film has amazing action.
Yeah, really great.
Incredible.
Very, I wouldn't say easy to follow, but it is. They don't cut away. So if you rewound it and watch the slow motion, you can figure out what's happening. It happens very fast. There's parts where he pushes guns out of the way very rapidly, and it's like actual martial arts.
It's
like
so
what you would
physical.
do.
Yes. If someone's pointing a gun at him, he pushes it away. It goes off.
Yeah.
He bashes it out of their hand. He smacks them across the face. He's forcing people's heads into rakes.
Yeah.
He's getting increasingly bloodied and bruised.
Yeah.
It's so physical and visceral.
Yes.
And there's not a lot of cuts, especially in the middle, which we're going to get to.
And strangely not as gory as the comic, which I thought was the comic's selling point to studios.
I dare say. Well we know already that the studios were already on board.
Yes.
The comic is nothing to do with this. I mean, we do films based on comic books and comic strips, but in this case, the film really exists as an independent entity.
Yes, but maybe they looked at the comic because it was out by the time they made this movie. Maybe they were like, let's look at, because there's things in here that are, well, I guess it's a script, but like there's a scene when he goes back into the nest of bad guys to rescue the kid. One of the bad guys is a little kid who's like 8 or 10 years old or something. It's a bit of foreshadowing about the bad guys in general, and
also Chris Hemsworth is soft on children, because although he does beat the shit out of crowd of him later, because of his backstory, which is that with dead kid spoilers. But I mean, again, not a surprise because it's
it's a cliche, but it's a better choice of cliche than the comic, which is just he's an awesome badass, a hard ass.
Incidentally, the different that scene you mentioned where he meets the kid is so much better in the film. Yeah. I mean, sometimes cliches aren't bad. He lets the kid go, of course.
Yeah.
Whereas in the film, he has a similar encounter.
Yeah.
It's not a kid, but it is a cowardly, youngish man.
Yeah.
And instead of letting him go, he beats the shit out of him, saying, "What did you think was going to happen, punk?
Yeah. Yeah.
What is this, wish fulfillment? It's yeah, take that.
Yeah.
Point a gun at me.
Yeah.
What, did you get bullied, Ande Parks, when you were a kid? Moving on.
So they decide to call up the other guy, Gaspar, the one who lives in...
Oh, hold on. Look, you can't... Sorry
have I missed something?
Kumar. No, you haven't missed anything. But I want to talk about the action sequence in the middle of the film.
Okay, sorry, yes.
We don't... This is 12 minutes long.
Yeah.
And it's not one take, but it's shot in a way that looks like one take.
Right.
We have a 12-minute long
yes.
sequence with no visible cuts.
Yes.
And it is so awesome.
Yeah.
So awesome. What happens is it's after the boat sequence. Tyler knows something's up. Ovi has told him, "Oh, I know who that is. It's Sarju. He works for my father."
And he gets a phone call from Vic, and she's like, we're not getting the money. The money's not coming through.
So he knows something up. At this stage, he wants to
south.
And in fact, Chris Hemsworth plays it really well. When he first rescues Ovi, he barely looks at him.
Yes.
He's just looking around.
Yes.
He takes photos of him with the phone, but he's not looking at him as he takes the photo. Yeah. It's so great.
Yeah.
Like, he just doesn't care. Or he's hyper aware of his surroundings. He's about doing the job.
Yeah.
He's looking at the kid as little as possible.
Yeah.
He either doesn't want to get involved with him, or he just wants to get the job done.
Well, he can't stand to look at a child.
Yeah.
It's as old as his son would be if his son had survived.
I totally noticed it because he really sells it. But then they go to the boat. Oh no, Sarju's killed everyone, including the director.
Yeah.
It's a problem. He tries to escape. He does escape. He goes back to the getaway vehicle. They get back in it. They drive off, and Sarju is in pursuit. And then we begin this amazing action scene.
Yes.
Worth the price of admission just for this scene. It's a car chase, but it's right up close. We're right behind the bumper of Chris Hemsworth's car.
Yeah.
And we're following it through the streets. People are running out of the way.
Yeah.
We're winding through these narrow streets.
Yep.
At one stage...
Is this the one where he falls off the roof and he gets hit by a truck? Or is that later?
That's all part of this scene.
Okay, that's all
part of the scene.
Yeah,
it's like 12 minutes later. It feels like an eternity later.
Yeah.
That's
why I was confused about when it was.
Yeah. And then, the cops cut them off.
Yeah.
So they come to a stop. And then, how do I describe it? It's brilliant. The camera stops from being behind the car.
Yeah. Comes
up next to the car on the left-hand side. And then goes in the rear passenger window.
Yes.
And then we're behind Tyler and Ovi in the back seat of their car. And I'm watching this. And I paused it and rewound it, and I couldn't see how they did it.
Yeah,
it's like it's like they handed the camera. It's all done with handheld camera too. Yeah. I actually, we don't talk a lot about production in this podcast, but I actually went and watched the behind the scenes of this scene, and the director himself was strapped onto the hood of a car, riding behind Chris Hemsworth driving the stunt car, and then when the car comes to a stop. Because of the blockade by the cops, he unbuckles himself from the car, runs up next to the passenger side window, and puts the camera in. And even though we saw the back seat was empty, there's a cut.
Okay.
Then he gets in the car and holds it in the same position that he did the cut, and then resumes filming.
I was going to assume...
And it looks so good.
Yeah. Yes. I was going to say my guess would have been that they actually had a removable door and the stagehand was there to take the door off the car when there was off camera, but no.
Good. That's what I wanted to know how it was done, which is why. It was done with a what did they call it? There was a specific technical term they used to describe it.
Okay.
God, what was it called? It doesn't matter, but it was this invisible cut.
Interesting thing I think about this movie and going, Bourne and John Wick and Taken to a certain extent, this is all out of this all would not happen with the Hong Kong movie influx that happened in the 90s and 2000s into Hollywood. I think I remember Jackie Chan would talk about Drunken Master 2. The climax of that movie is a 20-minute action sequence.
Yep.
Amazing, the most amazing action sequence you'll ever seen, but it's 20 minutes long. And he was talking about how in Hollywood that'll never happen because at that time he was making those Shanghai Nights or Shanghai Noon and the the Rush Hour movies, and it's like the climax is like 5 minutes of action, or something like that. And I actually think The Raid is the key movie that was like. Hollywood was like, okay, let's make movies like this, where it's just nonstop, just very long, very few cuts. There's a scene in the Daredevil TV show on Netflix.
Oh yeah, I know the exact scene you're talking about.
And I know where the cuts are, the corridor scene, because there are moments when nobody's on camera and you're like, aha, this is where they cut.
But it's a hidden cut.
Yes, it's a hidden cut. But I feel like it's very Asian cinema, and I think that's where it came from. And I think, but I mean. It's a good thing because...
Well, in this example, it's something of... There's an element of art from adversity in it, because I think maybe they had planned to shoot it from multiple angles, but then they got to this... Because once they leave the cars, they go into an apartment building.
Yes. They're chasing each other through there,
Yep. And they apparently decided that this apartment building was too cramped to do multiple angles.
Right.
Because they're running around... on balcony kind of walkways, which are about 3.5 feet wide.
Yes.
And just having these incredible fights that tracks one character, tracks another character.
That's the only moment where you get to see normal Bangladeshis living normal lives.
Listening to music in their
yes, and people you'd actually want to hang out with and maybe visit them in their homes. Was that moment where they're crashing through these apartments.
Yeah. But there are cuts, but they're all hidden. And it's a really, really good scene.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I agree.
And then at the end they throw themselves off that balcony.
And then somebody gets hit by a car.
They both get hit,
yes. That's fine, they're alright.
Chris Hemsworth has triumphed finally over Saju, because he and Saju have an epic battle.
Yeah.
They throw themselves onto an awning. That awning was built for the scene.
Okay.
Then they collapse onto the ground. Chris Hemsworth gets...
Hitting the awning is straight out of Jackie Chan's Project A.
Absolutely it is. He was always doing awnings.
Project A had the awning. But he might have even taken that from Buster Keaton.
Buster Keaton. He absolutely did.
Yeah.
But that's a topic for another podcast.
Yeah.
Chris Hemsworth gets up. He's triumphed over Saju at last, but then he gets hit by a car. Then Saju grabs Ovi. Ovi's happy enough to go with Saju because he knows who he is. But then...
But he's confused, I think. He's not really sure because... Hemsworth has warned him about Saju. He's like, things are not going... I'm working for your father.
Yeah.
Anyway, why is this happening? So the kid's not sure.
He doesn't have much agency. He's just being kind of passed from one person to another. But then, of course, and then Chris Hemsworth hits Saju with a truck.
Yes.
And then it's Saju's turn to get smashed down the street. And then he's like, get in the car, kid. They get in the car, and off they're driving, and that's the end of the scene, and... It's a ripper. It's an absolute ripper.
Okay.
So, and the conflict between Tyler and Saju is pretty epic, because they're both kind of implacable men.
Yes.
Neither of them is very...
but Saju's motivated to save his son's life and his wife. He is very highly motivated. And we get scenes where he calls his wife, and he's like, I love you, and let me speak to my son, and all that kind of stuff. He doesn't say what's going on. She knows. She was crying when she let him drop him off at the airport. Because she knew he was getting into trouble.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, we get a real side
to this guy, which I empathized with.
He's still a crook that works for a drug lord, but he's got...
It's hard to blame him for...
But so is Tyler. Tyler's a mercenary that slaughters people for money.
Yeah.
Neither of them are good people.
No, and he admits it later to the kid. He's like, sometimes I do...
We root for Tyler and not so much for Saju, unfortunately.
Except for a moment near at the end, Saju's like, when he
I was rooting for Saju.
When Saju switches sides, then... and helps him to get the kid across the bridge at the end of the movie, then you're like, okay.
I think it's worth asking why we're so pro... The movie wants us to be so pro Tyler and anti... I mean, is it just because he's Chris Hemsworth?
Yeah.
I mean, they do put quite a bit of time into giving Saju a motivation.
Yeah.
And a better motivation than money. He wants to... His kid is literally threatened.
Yes.
Anyway, Saju has a broken nose.
Yes. And I thought, put a pencil up there, dude. And he did not do it.
That scene, they didn't have the guts to do the Punisher-style pencil reset.
Yeah. And a sniffle.
Oh man.
So, okay, so finally we get to... So he's like, okay, I'll call up Gaspar, who's the guy who lives in Dhaka, who's retired.
Yeah.
Chris Hemsworth. He's like, we're going to call this guy up, and we're going to go stay with him, and he'll keep us safe. Gaspar is played by David Harbour, Hellboy.
Sure is. Yep.
So
Which we'll get to.
They go stay in Hellboy's house, and the kid goes to bed.
They have a bit of a heart-to-heart.
They have a heart-to-heart where he reveals that his son died of
lymphoma. Yep.
Yes, so this is where Tyler reveals that
He wasn't home.
Kid.
at
He
the
wasn't
time
home.
either.
He knew the kid had cancer, and he's like, I can't handle it, and went to a voluntary tour in Afghanistan.
Yep.
And was over there when the kid died.
Yep.
Just couldn't. Was too scared to deal with it.
Yep. Very kind of basic stuff.
Yes, but good. His performance is so
brave.
good.
Yeah.
I bought
His
it
performance
100%. If this was the first movie that did this storyline, it would be fine. If it's the 100th movie, that's the problem.
Yeah, for sure.
Otherwise, it would be his performance. It's so good. I bought the tears. I bought everything. I bought the quiver in his voice. All of it is really great. I felt very sad for him and what happened to that kid. My thing was, okay, first scene of the movie, forget the bridge. Let's have him in Afghanistan getting a text message and just looking at his phone and then cut to credits or something like that.
Yeah. Good call. Good call.
Yeah.
That would have fixed everything wrong with this movie.
So then
David Harbour.
he starts talking to him like, you should just kill that kid because he's going to be hunted down his whole life.
Yeah.
Make it easy for him, painless. Think about the pain that villain's going to do if he captures him, when he captures him again. You can't do this. The whole city's locked down. You don't have a hope.
Chris Hemsworth's already bonded with him, though.
Yes.
And it's a little more organic than the gross make-out that happens in the comic. They've had that heart-to-heart.
Yeah.
You know, we have this background with the kid.
Yes.
It's
And there's
not just
another
ironic.
heart-to-heart after this.
Yeah.
As well. So anyway...
But David Harbour's betrayed him. And it's a little more... It's better than the comic again, because in the comic... What's his name again? Gregor? This guy?
Gaspar.
Gaspar.
In this he's called Gaspar.
Gaspar just sort of announces that he's going to betray Tyler,
Yes.
and then Tyler throws his whiskey glass at him and they get in a fight.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not how you betray someone. David Harbour, way better.
Yeah.
Well, David Harbour, it turns out, works for
Yes.
Avia, the local drug
gang.
dealer.
Yeah.
The one
We haven't mentioned that guy at all.
Yeah, because he's utterly forgettable.
Well, he's a flamboyant villain. That's what they've done. He's very well dressed. Every scene he's like, oh, I wish I had that suit.
Sure, but I think he's very forgettable.
But he's a cliche. He's a cliched flamboyant villain. We got the same thing last week when Fast X came out, and that's what David Momoa is playing, as the well-dressed flamboyant villain.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Enough said. But David Harbour works for him. He's gone out to visit him
Yeah.
when Chris Hemsworth has been talking to Ovi, when Tyler's been talking to Ovi, and he sold him out.
Yeah.
$10 million.
Yeah.
They're going to split it.
Yeah.
He thinks he's
He
looking
offers
after...
to split it. Yeah.
He thinks he's looking out for Tyler.
Yeah. Yeah,
Which
he
is-
seems genuinely like this is the right thing to do. He's convinced himself anyway.
Yes.
That this is the right
So-
path.
Sure. Again, so we have the cliche
And
of
he has
the-
an unseen wife. He has a wife, he says, but she's somewhere else.
Yeah.
This is the safe house.
the friend become enemy, fine, but it's so much better than in the comic where he just says, well, gonna betray you now.
Yes.
And then they fight.
By the way,
Now we must fight.
In the comic, the villain cliche is that he has a shark tank in his house. He has an aquarium with sharks in
yeah.
it. And there's some comments about sharks. Those are the
With
metaphors they
lasers
pull.
attached to their heads.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's David Harbour also can act, so these scenes,
Yes!
this scene's fine.
Yes!
It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's an improvement.
Okay, so then they have to escape again. As they're escaping, so they find another place to hide out. It's like a factory or something. There's another heart here. I can't remember which happens to which, but at one point, Avi gives a speech about how when you fall in the water, you don't die when you fall in the water. You
It's if
die
you
when you
you die
stay
if
in
you
the
stay
water.
in the
If you
water.
stay in the water.
Not one of history's great aphorisms.
Well, it's a weird bit of wisdom coming from a 15-year-old.
Yeah.
But I don't remember why he gave this speech. I think he's figured out, because Tyler, Chris Hemsworth, reveals, like he says, is this what you do? You rescue people? And he says, sometimes they do other things.
Yeah.
And he says, you mean you kill people? And he says, yeah. Or he just nods or looks at him or whatever. Okay, so this is good.
when
I
he
actually like
realizes-
it because it casts light on him sitting at the bottom of the lake at the start of the movie. because he hasn't hit the water. He's staying in the water in that moment.
Right.
Right?
Fair enough.
And it will also cast light at the very end of the movie, which we'll get back to.
Yeah, sure. So, but anyway, now he realizes that there's only one way he's going to escape, and that's if he joins forces with his biggest enemy.
Yeah.
And that's, of course, Saju.
Yeah.
Some reason he's got Saju's phone number. Oh, well, 'cause
Yeah,
he was I guess he was the original contact.
Well, the kid would have Saju's number.
Sure. Anyway, calls him up. I need help. I just want to get the kid out.
Yeah.
You know, I don't care about the money anymore. I just want to get him out. So I'm just like, okay. So they come up with the plan. Big fight sequence on the bridge again. So Chris Hemsworth is drawing all of the... Because it's the army as well now. It's not just the cops.
Yeah.
Avir, I don't know why he had teenage hobos guarding Ovi in some grungy flat when he controls the army and the and the police. So they've got roadblocks on every bridge out of the place.
Yep.
Every bridge.
Yep.
And they're looking at every person that crosses the bridge to see if they're Ovi. Anyway, Chris Hemsworth is off somewhere drawing their fire. Saju and Ovi are trying to escape together, but oh no, they're caught.
Yeah, they try to sneak across. He's dressed kind of like in a shawl as a woman.
Yep.
Saju is anyway.
Then we have a big firefight.
Yeah.
Uh,
Very long. I actually looked at the time. So this movie is 2 hours long on Netflix. Actually, 15 minutes of credits.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
half an hour to the end, I was like, okay, they're on a bridge now, which is where this movie opened, on the
Yep.
bridge fight.
Yep.
And it was like, no, there's like half an hour
It's
left.
long, and again, it's great.
Yeah.
It's great. Like the action is so good,
Yeah.
really great, and I wasn't bored. Whereas I was bored during a lot of the talking. Whenever this, I know
yes.
we've established that you liked it. It's fine, but I was looking away a lot. I just wanted I wanted Chris Hemsworth to kick the shit out of people again
Yes.
in another scene. So that
By the way, it's when they were escaping from the factory place that they have to fight the kids. Finally, they're confronted by kids.
yeah.
And he actually says, what the fuck, when he sees them. Like,
Yeah.
what?
he beats the hell out of these children.
And he kind of doesn't kill them. Like, he's trying to knock them unconscious.
Yeah.
He's trying to deal with them in non-lethal ways.
He surely doesn't. He doesn't really hold back though. He really does beat the hell out of them.
No, that
but he
one-
doesn't kill them. You're right.
Yeah, but the main one, the kid that had cut off his own fingers and come at him for revenge from an earlier fight,
Yeah. Well, he
really
let
comes
him
at, he
go.
really goes at him because he's trying to kill him. But anyway,
His story goes nowhere.
Yeah.
He just disappears after this scene. Well, he shows up. He visits Avir in the only nice place we see in the whole of Dhaka, which is a casino apparently.
Yes, but that was before.
No, this is after. He let him go. He cuts off
Oh,
his
you're
finger.
right. You're right.
He goes, "Oh, I let him go, and I cut off my finger as tribute for you."
Doesn't he
And-
show up again?
And then Avir says, "Oh, okay, thanks, kid." And that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Then he never shows up again.
Yeah.
I don't know why is that in there. Whatever. So big action sequence. There's the Avir's pet on the police force is sniping people on the
Yes.
bridge. He kills Saju, unfortunately,
Yes.
with a headshot. But then Chris Hemsworth's handler, the woman, gets him.
Yeah. Gets the sniper. Yeah.
Gets the sniper right when he's about to shoot Tyler.
Yeah.
And Tyler, Chris Hemsworth. Then the kid escapes, but Tyler has been shot, mortally wounded.
Yeah.
Falls off the bridge.
Gets shot in the neck, through the neck, falls off the bridge, hits the water.
Yep.
Now again, you think back to the line: you don't die when you hit the water; you die when you stay at the bottom.
Yeah. So and then of course we see
The assumption is he's
Ovi
dead.
has resumed his life in Mumbai.
Yes.
He goes to the pool. He's sitting on the bottom of the pool.
He sits on the bottom of the pool.
much like
And we get a kind of montage sequence. So he sits at the bottom of the pool, yes. Then we get a scene in a bar or a party. Avir goes to the bathroom, as in the comic,
Yeah.
and he's followed in, this time by a woman.
yeah,
And it's Vic, and she shoots him dead in the bathroom. It's not.
just exactly like in the comic.
It's not
why
Tyler,
was it
who we're assuming is dead.
Yeah. Why is it so easy for him to shoot him? Whatever.
Yes, but
Doesn't he have to people?
also silencers.
Why are people letting a woman in the bathroom with their boss?
Yeah, how'd she walk in there?
It's
Yeah,
not
he's
even the women's
protected.
toilet; it's the men's
No,
toilet.
she walks up next to the urinal in a beautiful gown that she's wearing, and she shoots him. And silencers in movies are working. They just go.
Yeah.
They make that. That's not how silencers work in real life. They they don't really work at all, barely.
I have read that.
So anyway, she kills him, but because Tyler's dead. But then the last shot of the movie is Ovi comes up,
surfaces
from the bottom of the water, and behind him in the background, standing at the edge of the pool is a very blurry figure, probably about as blurry as the images we've seen of Tyler's son.
He does come into focus in one scene at the very end.
Does he
just
come
before
into
he
focus?
does?
I thought it was
apparently that's Chris Hemsworth's real son in those scenes. But
his son?
Yes, it's his real son, and he does come into focus only at the very end, presumably right when Chris Hemsworth takes his next shot.
Okay, I need to rewatch it. All right.
No, you. Yeah, well, you can rewatch it because this movie's really cool. And that, well, so blurry figure watching Obi in the pool. Is it Tyler? Spoilers, yes, it is Tyler because we're getting extraction.
Wait a second, but I thought you said he came into focus at the end.
No, that's the son.
Oh, the sun came in. Sorry, yes, the sun came.
Sorry, the sun came.
Yeah, the blurry figure. He's left blurry.
Okay, now I understand your confusion.
Yeah,
now.
sorry.
Yeah, but he does come into focus in the sense that we're getting a sequel with Chris Hemsworth.
Yes.
Extraction 2, and it's out.
Which will not be based on any comic book because there's never been another Ciudad comic.
Correct. All right.
So we don't have to cover it on the show.
No.
Also, it's not a feature film.
I think because I have a lot of complaints. But I think I've also made it clear that there are a lot of things I really liked about this movie.
Yes.
Specifically the action sequences and Chris Hemsworth's performance.
Yes.
Chris Hemsworth's performance is fantastic.
Yep.
The action sequences are really, really good.
Yep.
Especially that 12-minute one in the middle.
Yep.
And seeing how they shot it with men on bungee cords, jumping behind the actors.
Right.
The director himself handling the handheld cam.
Yep.
And riding on the hood of a car behind another car. Really cool. Really cool. Stuff I didn't like. The plot, obviously.
Yes.
It's tissue paper thin.
Yeah.
I made a list of as many cliches I could think of. You could probably think of a few more.
Yep.
The double cross. The Stockholm Syndrome. The reverse Stockholm Syndrome. Mercenary with a heart of gold / troubled past. The old friend who betrays you. The team up with your enemy. The maybe dead, maybe not ending. The comically evil antagonist. That's the end of my list.
Okay.
Any more that you think?
No, I didn't make a list. By the way, Stockholm Syndrome is not a real thing, also.
We're exploiting all kinds of
So
myths.
apparently so where it come from was this, there was a bank heist of some sort.
In Stockholm.
And there were a bunch of hostages, and finally it was resolved, but the police were very incompetent about the whole thing. So this woman who was rescued kept complaining about how incompetent the police were, and the psychiatrist was like, "Okay,
you've come to identify with your captor.
She loves the captors."
Sure.
So it wasn't.
I've heard it's overstated.
Yeah.
What else? I was bored whenever people were talking. I put that in. And my final note. Or did you want to address that one first?
Bored. Sure, they say boring things in a sense that we've heard them all before. It's just in the performances. The problem with the action, which is great, is that we're seeing a lot of it. And it actually even reminded me of Gun Kata from Equilibrium. What was that movie with...
Not sure.
Who was the guy with Batman in it? Who's the Batman Begins Batman? What's his name?
Christian Bale.
Christian Bale was in this movie that was like a cross between Brave New World and Fahrenheit 451. You've never seen this?
No.
It's set in the future where they burn books and they're on soma pills, so it's like Brave New World. But they have this thing called gun kata, where people do martial arts. They're holding guns in two hands and they're like flipping around.
Sounds ridiculous.
It's totally ridiculous.
It's not based on a comic, is it?
Unfortunately, no.
Damn.
Because that is a wacky movie.
I guess
I feel like I just feel like we've seen this. We've got 4 John Wick movies now.
Yeah.
3 Jason Bournes, Mr. Nobody, 3 Take-Ins. I feel like I've seen this kind of action.
Exactly. And it was hard to care about what they were saying because I knew it wasn't in service of a story that I particularly cared about.
Yes.
Yeah, I just kind of knew where it was going, especially because I read the comic first.
Okay.
But also, even if I hadn't read the comic, I stand by that statement at the start. I feel like you sort of know where it's going in the first in the first 10-15 minutes.
Yeah.
My only other point would be that this film's kind of racist.
Yes, and now you've revealed to me it's even more racist against Bangladesh than I thought it was.
Cast any Bengali actors.
Wow. It is.
I guess any old South Asian actor will do.
I kind of was under the false assumption that the comic was not racist because it was a fake city, but it's not. It's actually a real city. So,
a bit of a rough town, but not anything like it's a bit of a kind of frontier town. But
even Slumdog Millionaire was criticized for its depiction of Mumbai as being like a real like a slum. People always focus on the slum because it has let's use the word amazing slum. It has the world's biggest slum, and there's literally millions and millions of people packed into the slum, and you won't see anything else like it anywhere on Earth. Right. So I can kind of understand why, as a filmmaker, you're like, oh my God, we got to see that and put that on film, because you're not going to see that. We've never seen that before.
Yeah.
And it was criticized for its depiction
because
as
there's
well.
more to Mumbai than just the slum.
But
although the character would have spent his whole life in the slum.
Yeah.
But in this case, you know, we see like we never see any part aside from this casino with the scumbag.
We really got a white savior here.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
We need this white guy to come in and solve it. As you said, Saju could have solved this problem himself. The guy's in special forces. He got hit by a truck and got up. I guess Chris Hemsworth did too, but I mean, come on.
Chris Hemsworth, I mean, when you take a step back and try to look at it objectively, he's the designated hero. He's not any more moral or valiant.
No,
and
the movie points out that he does kill people sometimes.
Yep, and Saju, as you said, was doing it to save his kid. Chris Hemsworth's doing it for cash.
Yeah.
But Chris Hemsworth's the only guy that can do it, and he's the guy that Ovi eventually identifies with and comes to trust. And of course, he's the only one that survives the movie.
And then he talks about how he doesn't like his own father because he's a drug dealer and he kills people too. Yeah. Which he says, like...
Well, Chris Hemsworth kills people.
That's what he said. Chris Hemsworth says, I kill people. Sometimes they kill people. And then he's like, my father kills people too.
So that was problematic too. We have this white savior narrative.
Yes.
So if you can look past those and and enjoy the great action, I can recommend this film.
Well, I'm going to say... okay, so let's just do the ratings. Comic, nay, right?
Nay, 100%
okay,
nay, yeah.
Okay, movie... Where are you coming down?
I'm coming down yay because of the action and Chris Hemsworth's performance.
I'm going to come down nay.
Amazing.
But I'm going to say that I actually think this is a decent movie for what it is. I think the action is great. I think Chris Hemsworth is awesome in this. I like the other character. I like the other actors in it. I like the Saju backstory in it, where he's trying to save his son. I liked all that stuff, but there's just, as I said, you can see the action and you can watch a John Wick.
Oh, right,
you know what I mean?
John Wick, right.
So if you can watch, we've seen it before. So if you want to watch a 12-minute no cut, watch Drunken Master 2 or Daredevil. You know what I mean? I mean, it's great, but it's in a sense, it's becoming another cliche. Watch The Raid. Oh my God, watch The Raid. You know.
Okay, sure.
So that's why it's a nay, but I wouldn't blame you if you watched it and said you liked it, because it's good for what it is.
What an interesting reversal. Normally,
especially for Netflix release, I was surprised. Usually I don't watch a lot of Netflix stuff because I found it's all quite samey. But I was really shocked to find that it was a Netflix release.
Boy, it has some serious problems. But like I said, like some of the I haven't seen John Wick.
Right. Okay.
Maybe that's why I enjoy this movie so much.
Yes,
I haven't seen a single John Wick film.
As I said, it's the same thing with the backstory with the dead son. If there had never been a dead son movie before, you would have been like, "Wow, this is a deep movie."
Right.
It's actually got deep characterization and has actual depth to the characters.
Oh, okay, I got you.
But it's not. It's the 10th time we've seen it.
My vote is yay film if you haven't seen John Wick, like me.
Yeah.
All right, adaptation, yay or nay?
Wow, I'm gonna say yay because I think it has improved. As I said, it's a better set of cliches. It's got the performances substituting for the artwork are better.
Yeah.
And all the elements are there.
Yeah.
Even the scene with the kid, as we said, all the little details are basically all there. I was surprised. I thought it was going to be really different. Especially when it opened in Mumbai, I was like, oh, they're going to have changed this thing completely. And I was like, no, it's actually the same structure.
Yeah.
Even the boat, when they got to the boat in the movie, I was like, oh, this wasn't in the comic. But I went back to the comic. It's like, oh, it is in the comic. So it was one of those things where I'd forgotten that it was in the comic. So all that stuff is there and in some form. So I'm going to say yay.
Yes. I have two answers.
Okay.
First of all, I'm going to say yay as well for similar reasons to you. A lot of stuff the comic kind of stumbles over. Mm-hmm. The film definitely improves on.
Yeah.
Like there's action scenes where I didn't know what was going on in the comic.
Yes.
Obviously, action in the movie is really good. David Harbour's character is a big improvement.
Yes.
Gaspar, huge improvement.
Yeah.
The idea that Chris Hemsworth is a father figure to Ovi instead of trying to make out with him.
Oh my God! Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Although, as I say, the film may be even more cliched than the comic,
Well,
but
you
it's
know
the
what?
right cliches.
You know what?
Or it's
Watching
better
that, I was like, oh, this is Ripley and Newt. Is what I was thinking. Especially the director's cut of Aliens, where you get to see that her daughter had died and was like 60.
Oh yeah.
You know, and all that stuff in Aliens.
That film's good.
And I was like, oh, okay, so this is basically that thing again, where you got to
Absolutely.
rescue the son that you couldn't rescue the first time because you weren't there.
Absolutely. But it's better cliches.
Yes. Yeah.
Than maybe not the right cliches, but better cliches.
Yeah.
Or do I vote nay for adaptation? Because, as we've discussed, is this film even an adaptation
Oh,
of the comic?
Of course. I never even thought of that. That's a hard nay, really, in a sense. No, that's a nil. That's a N/A, not applicable. That nay.
Because this has been a film for years.
But it was a comic for years.
12 years, yeah.
It was a comic for 12 years, too. Look, it's simultaneous.
Yeah. I'll go back to what Ande Parks said in that 2014 interview. He said, quote, "As far as I know, this is a unique situation.
Yeah.
The book, comic, isn't an adaptation of a movie or a screenplay. I think you can relate the graphic novel and the screenplay to twins who were separated at birth.
Ah, okay.
They have the same DNA,
Okay.
but have been raised by different people,
Okay.
and so have become very different things."
Okay. Well, let's say if I was a Muggle looking at Wikipedia and it said this is a movie based on a comic book, which it does. It says based on the graphic novel. There's no link to Ciudad. It doesn't have its own Wikipedia page. But if I was to read that, then I would assume this is an adaptation. Then I would say it was a yay. But knowing
what you do,
that they're twins separated at birth, well, let's say the twins look enough alike.
Fair enough. So you stick with your yay vote?
Yeah, I'm going to stick with my yay, I think.
All right, I'm gonna go with my yay/nay.
Okay, excellent.
Next week we got a big. Okay, this is exciting.
Okay, next week we are definitely not going into Oblivion. I've been thinking we should do Oblivion ratings, like 1 to 10. How oblivious is this?
No,
We're going to do Batman 1989. So tomorrow, the new Flash movie is coming out, and
Michael Keaton
is in
reprising his role as Batman.
He's in
Amazing.
as Batman, which I can't believe. But by all accounts, that movie's pretty middling. Well, I know somebody I saw. I think somebody said it was decent, and somebody said it was not great. Anyway,
Oh well, middling is the
yes,
is the
yeah,
is the mean between those two.
Yes. So it's not Oblivion, but that movie has cast such a long shadow. It's colored so many movies that we've already talked about,
Yes.
and will talk about everything. There are a lot of what I consider they're like landmark moments. There's like Superman 78,
Yep.
Batman 89,
Oh, yes.
Iron Man 2008 are like three big ones. I feel like there's another one I'm forgetting, but anyway.
So we're going to cover one of the big three.
Yeah, so
And of
Batman,
course
we
we're-
have, even when we were talking about Dick Tracy, we had to talk about Batman.
Absolutely.
It was like affects everything.
Master of the
affects everything.
Phantasm, we had to talk about Batman.
Yes.
This is, I think when we did the Captain America movie, we had to talk about Batman. This is
Yes.
a significant landmark film
Yes.
in the context
Yeah, in
of this,
so many ways.
in cinema and in this podcast in particular.
Yes.
And I can't wait to talk about it.
All right. Excellent. Oh, and which comics we'll read? Definitely Joker's Five-Way Revenge, which is a single issue, and maybe one other. I found an interview with Sam Hamm where he talked about what comics he read to prepare for writing the screenplay. So
Great.
it won't really matter. I think most people know who Batman is.
Can't wait to
think.
find out.